fast cars, high stakes, and one of the coolest movie soundtracks of the early 2000s. The Fast and the Furious wasn't just a movie, it was a cultural shift. It kicked off a billion-dollar franchise and turned street racing into mainstream entertainment. But how did this 2001 action flick go from an undercover cop story to a global phenomenon? Buckle up, because today on the Screen Review, we're diving into the movie that started it all. Let's rewind to where it all began. The Fast and the Furious, directed by Rob Cohen, follows Brian O'Connor, played by the late Paul Walker, an undercover cop tasked with infiltrating the underground world of illegal street racing. His mission? Find out who's behind a series of high-speed truck hijackings. But there's a twist. Brian finds himself drawn to the adrenaline-fueled culture and the charismatic leader of the pack, Dominic Toretto, played by Vin Diesel. As the lines blur between duty and loyalty, Brian has to choose the law or the family he's found in Dom's crew. So what made this movie hit so hard? For one, the chemistry. Paul Walker's laid-back charm played perfectly against Vin Diesel's intense, no-nonsense attitude. Then there's the action. Practical stunts, real cars, and just the right amount of early 2000 seconds, CGI. The movie tapped into a subculture that hadn't been explored in mainstream Hollywood, street racing. With neon-lit visuals, booming hip-hop and rock tracks, and the thrill of nitrous-fueled speed, it felt fresh, fast, and fun. At the time, The Fast and the Furious was a surprise hit, grossing over $200 million worldwide. What started as a street racing crime thriller eventually evolved into a full-blown global heist and action saga, spawning 9 sequels and counting, a spin-off, and even a Netflix animated series. And let's be real, Dom's family speech? It became a meme before memes were even a thing. Let's talk about the performances, starting with Paul Walker. Now, Walker wasn't exactly an Oscar contender, but in this role, he had exactly what he needed: charm, likability, and just enough acting chops to sell Brian's internal struggle between his loyalty to the law and his growing respect for Dom's crew. His delivery can be stiff at times, but he pulls off the undercover cop angle well enough that you buy into his story. Plus, let's face it, the dude just looked like the perfect early 2000 seconds action star. Then there's Vin Diesel. Love him or not, the man owns this role. His presence is undeniable, and when he talks about family, you believe him. Diesel brings the perfect mix of intensity and vulnerability, especially in the scenes where he talks about his father's death. His monologue about hearing his dad die in a crash, that's the emotional moment of the movie, and Diesel nails it. He makes Dom Toretto a character you root for, even when he's clearly breaking the law left and right. And then there's the rest of the cast. Look, I'm not saying they're terrible, but let's just say no one else is exactly memorable. Jordana Brewster as Mia is serviceable but doesn't leave much of an impression beyond being a love interest. Michelle Rodriguez as Letty has a tough, no-nonsense attitude, but her performance feels a bit one-note. Then there's Rick Yoon as Johnny Tran. He does the whole menacing villain thing well enough, but his character is so underdeveloped that he barely registers as a real threat. And let's not forget Ja Rule's cameo, or maybe we should forget it, that Monica line. Yeah. That's about as memorable as it gets for him. At the end of the day, The Fast and the Furious isn't a movie you watch for Oscar-worthy performances. It's all about the cars, the action, and the over-the-top fun. Walker and Diesel carry the movie with their charisma, and everyone else? They're just kinda there. But hey, for a movie about illegal street racing and DVD player heists, does it really matter? The cinematography, while not anything groundbreaking, is what stands out in this movie. First off, the visual style is quintessentially early 2000s. There's a gritty, raw feel to it, especially in the street racing scenes. The handheld camera work gives you a sense of speed and danger, putting you right in the middle of the action. It's a bit rough around the edges, but it adds to the chaotic energy of the races. The camera isn't static or polished, it's in motion, just like the cars. The movement is fast, sometimes shaky, which helps immerse you in the high-stakes racing world. Speaking of the races, the cinematography in those moments is where the movie really shines. The use of quick cuts, low angles, and extreme close-ups during the street racing scenes gives the viewer that sense of urgency. When you see the cars speeding down the track, the camera zooms in on the engines, the tires, and the drivers' intense faces, making you feel every rev of the engine and every twist of the wheel. And let's not forget the slow-motion shots of the cars flying through the air, pure cinematic adrenaline. The camera work really sells the danger and excitement. The color palette is drenched in neon blues, purples, and oranges, especially when it comes to the night racing scenes. It's almost as if the neon lights of the street scene are part of the action. The lighting is bold and contrasts the darkness of the streets, highlighting the sleek cars and the tough characters. The film uses streetlights and the headlights of the cars to create a moody atmosphere that emphasizes the underworld vibe of street racing. There's also a recurring theme of using wide shots to establish the vastness of the race culture. These shots often feature the skyline or a wide stretch of highway, showing the characters against a bigger backdrop, almost like they're small pieces in this massive, high-octane world. It's a subtle touch that gives the movie scope and scale while keeping the focus on the action. Let's talk about the pacing and atmosphere. One thing this movie gets right is the pacing. Right from the jump, we're thrown into an adrenaline-fueled world of high-speed heists, street races, and undercover cops. There's barely a moment to breathe, and that's exactly what makes it work. The movie moves at breakneck speed, much like the cars it showcases. Every few minutes we're either in a chase, a fight, or a dramatic confrontation. It never lingers too long on exposition, which keeps the energy up. Even the quieter moments, like Brian and Dom bonding over cars or Mia and Brian's romance, are paced just quickly enough to not drag the momentum down. That said, the pacing isn't perfect. Some of the middle scenes, like the prolonged garage hangouts or minor side character moments, can feel like they slow things down a little too much. But just when it feels like the story might stall, the film throws in another high-speed sequence or a tense showdown to keep things moving. The final act, with the highway truck heist and Brian's ultimate decision, is a perfect example of how the movie builds to an exciting and satisfying conclusion without losing its momentum. There is one absolutely hilarious scene that always gets to me. Right after the first big race, Brian and Dom are running from the cops and end up in the wrong neighborhood. After a tense back and forth with some rivals, the car they were driving is shot up and explodes. The movie gets very loud and tense, and while the flames are billowing up from the eclipse, there is a hard cut to the two walking away, with Brian saying something along the lines of, "What was that all about?"
So what the hell was that all about?
It is such a silly and jarring transition that just kills me with laughter every time. Now, let's talk about atmosphere. The Fast and the Furious absolutely nails the underground street racing vibe. The neon-lit streets, the bass-heavy soundtrack, the sweaty, crowded race gatherings. It all creates an immersive world that feels both dangerous and exhilarating. The movie makes you feel like you're in the heart of the early 2000s LA car scene, complete with over-the-top street races and shady backroom dealings. The tension in this world is always present. Whether it's the looming threat of Johnny Tran's crew, the police cracking down on street racing, or the unspoken rivalry between Brian and Dom, the film keeps a constant air of unpredictability. The nighttime races, with their glowing undercarriages and roaring engines, make the world feel like a lawless underground battleground, where respect is earned through speed. Even in the quieter moments, there's a sense of something brewing, alliances forming, betrayals lurking, and adrenaline always ready to spike. Finally, let's talk about the rewatchability of this movie. This is the one area, to me at least, where The Fast and the Furious absolutely shines. Is this movie rewatchable? And the answer, at least for me, is a resounding yes, even if I fully admit it's not a good movie. It's a guilty pleasure at its finest, so let's break down why. Let's be honest, this movie is kind of a mess. The dialogue is corny, the plot is paper thin, and the performances outside of Vin Diesel and Paul Walker are mostly forgettable. And yet, somehow, it still manages to be an absolute blast every single time I put it on. There's something about The Fast and the Furious that makes it one of those movies you can throw on at any time and just enjoy, without needing to think too hard. Part of it comes down to its sheer energy. The movie never slows down enough for you to dwell on its flaws. It moves from one ridiculous moment to the next, over-the-top street races, absurd heists and dramatic showdowns, all with that early 2000s and cool factor that makes it feel like a time capsule of an era. The soundtrack, the neon-lit streets, the overuse of nose, It all adds to this hyper-stylized, borderline cartoonish world that's fun to revisit. Another key factor is nostalgia. Whether you saw it when it first came out, or you're just familiar with how big the Fast and Furious franchise has become, watching this first movie is almost like looking back at a simpler time. Before the series went full-on superhero mode, it was just about fast cars, illegal street racing, and DVD player heists. There's a certain charm in that, and it's weirdly comforting to go back and relive it. And finally, it's just so easy to watch. The movie doesn't demand much from you. It's pure escapism. It's the kind of film you can throw on while hanging out with friends, while multitasking, or just when you want to watch something that's entertaining without being heavy. Even knowing the story inside and out, there's always something fun about seeing Brian and Dom's bromance, the absurd street racing sequences, and the classic quarter-mile at a time speech. So, is The Fast and the Furious a cinematic masterpiece? Absolutely not. But is it ridiculously rewatchable? Without a doubt. It's the definition of a guilty pleasure movie. Flawed, cheesy, but undeniably entertaining. And at the end of the day, sometimes that's all you need. Unfortunately, rewatchability doesn't mean it is good. I'm feeling a solid 5 on this one. Even though it's only a 5 out of 10 for me, it is still one of my most watched movies, and one of the few that I will throw on multiple times a year just for a silly good time and a laugh. What about you? Is this movie one of your guilty pleasures too, or do you think it's just bad with no redeeming qualities? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this review, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay fast, stay furious.